Party wants to blend electoral politics with action to put the power in the hands of the people, so that when we do get those elected officials, there's a movement behind them. And Jen, I know you talk about this a lot with generational change and the direct action work that you were doing out in your community. It's a similar concept. We have to build up in our own communities and do things for people that are hurting right now, while also coupling that with electoral politics. And that's really the vision that a party should have. Electoral politics is only one part of it. It's an important part, but it's only one.
Yep, and that's a very good point. And Kyler Asada, who's a great supporter of the show, brings up a really great point.
Well, that's what we do because that's where we are. We're in Florida right now. There's two parties. We have no other option. So that is the option right there.
It is what it is. Access and all that is a very big problem. So why not, if we are doing a third party, and currently it takes a long time to build that infrastructure, get the ballot access, get people excited about joining that contingency. I think there's still something to be said for the importance of electing non-corporate representatives. Now, the way we look at it, which is something that I'm not too sure too many are obviously following in terms of strategy, is the way that the Tea Party was able to systematically take over the GOP, which is not just elect representatives, but also to elect school board members, city council members, precinct committee captains. Like, the local component is so very important. And so one of the things that we have noticed is that there's really no synergy, at least at this point, it doesn't seem like there is, between those individuals who want to be part of the third party movement and those who want to fight within the Democratic Party. I think there needs to be sort of an understanding amongst both movements that it's cool if you want to fight on that side. It's cool if you want to fight on that side. But as long as we recognize that electing non-corporate representatives at the end of the day who are actually going to fight, as you alluded to, Zaina, is really the key to how we are able to move forward, along with the street heat that we had talked about before. So what do you guys think about that?
I think what happens to the non-corporate candidates when they go into the Democratic Party and they get elected. Look at the members of the squad. The members of the squad end up voted for Pelosi. First vote that AOC and other members of the squad took when they got to Congress was they voted to affirm Pelosi's speakership. Again, they voted for her just a few months ago. When they had an opportunity, there was a forced to vote push, which we were a part of. We helped organize that. And that was actually saying, wow, now at this point, there's lots of progressives that say, well, we just don't have the numbers. Well, that's not true anymore. They have the numbers. They have the numbers in Congress. They make up the difference in the House, and they also make up the difference in the Senate, because Bernie Sanders has as many votes as Joe Manchin. So he can demand as well. If Manchin is saying that we need to bring unemployment insurance, as he was during the COVID relief negotiations, from 400 down to 300, Bernie can say, the hell with that. We're going to bring it to 600. He can say, we're going to give that full $2,000 stimulus, and I'm not voting for anything less. But they're not doing that. He's not doing that. The squad's not doing that. They refused to demand anything when they voted for Pelosi, when they gave their votes for that. And the bar was set on the floor. It was give us a floor vote on Medicare for all. And it was AOC herself who drew that line and said months before, it wasn't even a year before that, who said that the Democratic Party is not a left party. We don't have a left party in this country. The Democratic Party is a right party or a center conservative party. And the way that you know that is we can't even get a floor vote on Medicare for all. And then since then, you've seen that pattern. Some people thought, oh, well, maybe it's an aberration. Maybe it's an aberration of what happens to progressives who go into the Democratic Party. Well, since then, we saw the same thing play out in the $15 minimum wage fight. We saw the same thing play out when they gave Biden left credibility and cover during his 100 days. They said he's exceeded expectations. He gets an A+, he gets 100%. We saw the same thing when AOC donated to this very same people that she said 2 years ago that she was going into primary. The same thing. She's donating to corporate Democrats now who she would have been challenging, who are against Medicare for all. So that's what happens to progressives that go inside the Democratic Party. And that's part of the reason that we're going backwards in that party. Incrementalism is too kind to describe what happens inside the Democratic Party, because we had Hillary Clinton offering to lower the age of Medicare to 55 or 50, and Joe Biden is saying, I'm going to veto Medicare for all, and we'll bring it down to 50. And by the way, we're going to put it inside the reconciliation bill, which means it's dead on arrival, and the squad's all co-signing that.
All right. Well, I'm going to push back on that. And a great question from Renee Johnston. Can you ask for the specific states where there is ballot access, where they are able to be listed on the ballot as of today? So one of the main arguments, which I think is a valid one, when it comes to the pushback on the third party movement versus still trying to fight within the Democratic Party, is the whole concept of infrastructure. You know, we talk about we can't wait. There is no time for incrementalism. And the idea of building an infrastructure for a whole new party, as far as I can tell, that's more incrementalism, because that takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of time to build up a coalition and excitement, if you will, about this whole idea we're going to rush into this new party. And unless there's a consensus, as we like to talk about, you see, we believe that any type of third party movement, or as Jen likes to say, an actual second party.
Right. Well, that's the thing.
You know,
I mean, I would argue
parties,
we don't have two parties. We don't have a Labor Party.
We're completely co-opted by management now.
Yeah.
We need a party of labor.
We need a labor
party.
party.
If there is an actual labor movement that is pushing for, let's say, another option, I think that that is really the essence of how we're able to get there. But we are curious because, again, where are you currently in terms of ballot access as of today?
Where can people support?
Because again, those who would say, let's fight within the Democratic Party because it's going to take a heck of a lot longer to build that infrastructure for a third party. Either one who wants to jump in.
Dana, did you want to take that?
Yeah,
People can. So as I mentioned before, just very quickly to the question was, as I said, we don't have ballot access in any state yet. We're working on that, but you can register in a number of different states already, including California, Colorado, Maine, many different states already. And we're organizing to actually get ballot access in many other states.
Okay. So that makes sense. But for certain states, like for us in Florida, we're closed primaries. So for somebody in Florida to register as anything other than a Democrat or Republican, you really don't get to vote in a primary. Like you really get no say-so in anything, just because that's just what you're given and that's just the option. So, you know, I would love to see like there not just be those two choices. I'd like to see the Democrats actually be a Labor Party. I'd like a lot of things. But right now, like Florida is slow. Well, that's the thing. We're going to be the last state. We'll be underwater. I actually believe we'll be underwater before we'll have open elections, ranked choice voting, or fair primaries here. That's my personal thought. So.
Yeah, unfortunately, Florida is one of those states that's going to need massive movements from other states before we are actually able to get where we need to go. And the party infrastructures down here are just so stagnant. But even if we wanted to, the type of hoops that you have to jump through, even if you wanted to be a member voting of other, conglomerates, whether it was the Green Party, for example,
even if it's libertarian, if it's anything that's just on the ballot, it doesn't matter.
And so the other thing to consider is it's not just electing congressional representatives or Senate members. There's the judges, there's municipal elections that are so very important. Now, when you talk about the movement for a third party and the idea that you're going to run candidates, there's two rules of thought that I thought of that I think is very important here. And this is where I stand, because I still think fighting within the Democratic Party in the short term is still the best way to go. But if you are building a third party movement, there are so many open races in regards to no party affiliation, like city council, county commission, races like that. And then also there are tons of races all throughout the country in which seats are not even challenged. It's a red seat, it's a blue seat, and there is no second party that is actually challenging them. So have you given much thought in terms of that particular strategy, in terms of building that foundation? Like, we're going to target these seats that make a lot of sense because they aren't being challenged and because you don't necessarily need to be affiliated with one of the two major parties, but you could have the banner, if you will, of the MPP. What do you guys think about that?
I think local races are really important. I think growing out support for local races are going to be critical, as you had mentioned. And there are places where, we talk about closed primaries, but there are many states that we can also potentially, folks can run as independent. I always like to point that out. Can't run as a People's Party candidate right now because we're working on the ballot access. Run independent. You don't have to run as a Democrat or a Republican. And I know some states it's more difficult to run independent, but the majority of Americans are now registered literally as independent voters. The majority of Americans have fled the voter rolls of both parties. And so I think that it's also folks taking the initiative to run and think outside of the box when it comes to that, as we're working through all the bureaucracy and red tape to build a party. But then that also goes back to the organizing aspect. I think that as we move along, we have to continue to push the current elected representation that we have to do better and to do the right thing. You know, after we showed up at AOC's office, what was it? It was 4 days later, they showed up at the steps of the Capitol building, calling for you know, something that I know Cori Bush is very passionate about, which is keeping folks housed. However, what's unfortunate about that is there's still 1.1 million people that are not covered by Biden's Band-Aid solution, but yet that was considered a triumph. That was considered, you know, a win, and it was celebrated.
Yeah.
And that's what made me sad on my end, because I was like, man, it's like we could have stayed out. We could have stayed out there a little bit longer. If they caved on this, we could push instead of calling it a win. You know, at that point, it's not a win. We got to stop calling breadcrumbs that these people that are sitting in the House and the Senate and in our legislative houses and the state houses, when they give us breadcrumbs, we got to stop calling it a win, and we got to start calling it what it is. It's a breadcrumb. Fix the real issue. Cori Bush had a resolution for housing as a human right. And I barely heard it spoken about when I was there. There were people circulating like, we're just here to extend the moratorium. We're not here to talk about that bill or that resolution. That's disappointing to me, man.
Yeah.
Housing human rights, she literally released that resolution the same day that she called for this, you know. So why not push for housing as a human right? Because any person, the 600,000 every day that are houseless, before the pandemic, housing security was a major issue. The only thing that this covers in most states, people have to prove that the reason they're about to be houseless is because of the pandemic.
Thanks for watching. If you want to support our mission to transform politics into service, please like this video, subscribe, follow us on social media, and consider joining our Patreon, where you'll get early access to our interviews as well as other exclusive content. Links are in the description. Peace out.